Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is Battlepillars Gold Edition. What it should have been was bloody Child of Light. Guess what happened? About ready to do my video, I'd got fairly far into the game, I was feeling confident about it, and what happens? Oh yes, an update makes the save files incompatible. So I lost all my progress. So what does that mean? That means we do something else that was perhaps unplanned, but we kind of have to do it the last minute. I'm gonna be honest about my production schedule here. That really threw me off. This was not supposed to be the video today. But thankfully, these kind of games are reasonably easy to assess. So what is Battlepillars? It's developed by a company called Hitcents. They did release a game on Steam previously called Draw a Stickman Epic, which was actually decent. And this was originally a mobile game, you can probably tell just by looking at the interface. Big, colorful buttons, settings that is just absolutely massive and contains barely anything. Yeah, it's pretty much a mobile game in a nutshell. Although what I will say is that despite the fact that the game was designed, of course, for iOS and 4x3, although it was also on things like Android phones, they do actually have some modern resolution options, but they do them in a weird order that makes no sense. Trying to figure this one out. I mean, this is okay. This is all totally fine. But then we go, okay, so there's 1080p, and then there's 1440 by 900, and then 2560 by 440. Okay, that's a bit of a weird one. There are no graphics options of any description outside of full screen on or off. It is a 2D game. You don't really need them. I don't think there's actually anything here that I would say would be missing. Outside of that, there is no key rebinding, although it's worth noting that this game can be played entirely with the mouse. Not that you actually need to, there are also hotkeys. I don't think a game like this needs key rebinding, but I can definitely see some people that would want to take the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and maybe rebind it to Q, W, E, R, T or something along those lines. So it would be nice to have nonetheless, but I think of the sins that could have occurred, this was a fairly minor one. Alright, let's get into Battlepillars Gold Edition and show you exactly what's going on. So you've got an endless mode, a test zone, and multiplayer. I'd love to show you the multiplayer. It's highly unlikely anyone is playing, as demonstrated. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Now, we can create a game. What you can do, which is kind of nice, is you can customize the upgrades that you want you and your opponent to actually have, which is pretty cool. So this allows you to use upgrades purchased by both players. This is, depending on which upgrades you've got, you can use them. So this is through the single player that you earn this. Then you can use segments purchased by either player. I like the fact that this exists. I do still think that the game would probably be better off if it just unlocked everything right from the start for multiplayer. There's something I said about footlols as well, and I think that the game was genuinely hurt by it. But I like the fact that they've at least made an effort and said, oh yeah, you know what would really suck if you get into a multiplayer game and someone has loads more upgrades than you, and you just get stomped into the floor. That would kind of suck. So I guess we're doing the campaign for the time being, and I'll show you exactly what this game is, which is you create caterpillars, and they have weapons attached to them, and they kill the other caterpillars, and then you attempt to destroy the base. It's really as simple as that. There is an upgrade system, which will allow you to, yeah, upgrade stuff. I know, shocking, isn't it? I'm going to increase my feet power so that I can... Or try to. There we go. So I can now move a little bit faster if I place that. You can also upgrade your base, so you can put a bigger defense turret on it. You can increase your leaf production, which is the main in-game currency of this actual title, and then you can increase the defense of your base. You also have allies, including Larry the Bird, who gives you an achievement, I believe, called Flappy Turd, at which point I almost alter-forward the game. Almost. But there is a wizard turtle, and that kind of makes up for it. You can also unlock various skins if you so desire, and this gold edition apparently has other skins. None of these... I don't know if any of these are actually important in any way, but yeah, you can see they actually do have very, very slight changes, which is kind of neat. I like the fact that these are not just cosmetic. You get a poison resistance here, so you can switch between them. That actually increases your damage significantly, so it's alright. What is that? That looks extremely familiar. I'm trying to figure out where exactly it came from. But you get the idea. I'm going to switch over to the red caterpillar skins here. So that's that. You can put up to 6 segments into your loadout when you go into each level. You can see I have 5 here. You can buy a 6th for apples. These would be available for microtransactions in the mobile game, but they're not available here, which Makes sense considering this game costs money, whereas the mobile version didn't. Doesn't cost a lot of money, but money nonetheless. Okay, let's go into the game and show you what's going on with it. So, as you can see, there's 2 bases either side, and you build caterpillars. How do you do that? Well, you spend leaves, which you can upgrade the gathering of. So I can click that, and that will actually create a caterpillar. Now, you can do this entirely with the mouse, or you can do it with the keyboard. It's really up to you. And I certainly appreciate that fact, because I think the game would be highly frustrating if that were not the case, and it's actually the sign of a pretty decent PC port, shockingly enough. I know we've gone through a lot of mobile games where the PC ports have obviously been absolutely awful and they've not really thought about anything, but the fact this has full mouse control also allows you to zoom all the way out here as well, which is another reason why high resolution is kind of helpful. There we go, grab one of those, and one of those. So, it actually works pretty well on PC, surprisingly enough. You've still got this kind of annoying click resources on the screen system. You know, that mechanic, I don't hate it, but you know, it's just a bit fiddly, I feel. And it's clearly designed with touchscreens in mind. This is especially true if you're trying to build your caterpillars while also clicking on stuff. That's actually a bit difficult to do, because the default button to spawn your caterpillar is enter. So you have to slide your hand across the keyboard if you actually want to make that happen, which is a little silly, and also another reason why rebindable keys would have been better. What is it, though? I mean, it's a tug-of-war game. I think that's probably the best way to describe it, games like this these days. It is a tug-of-war. You have limited resource management, and the point of the game is to eventually push your opponent all the way back to the other side and destroy his base. So it's a strategy game boiled down to the bare essentials of what a strategy game is. As to the origin of this genre, and it's been around for quite some time, and it's hard to really know whether or not it came from the original StarCraft, because Brood War definitely had some tug-of-war maps, and of course Warcraft 3 had them, StarCraft 2 does. Some of the most popular StarCraft 2 modes are still tug-of-war maps in the arcade. But as to whether Brood War invented this, and I guess you can call it a genre now because there's so many games that do it, did Brood War invent this genre? It might have. It's definitely a possibility. Or was it, in fact, actually something that came from a Flash game? As you probably noticed, a lot of Flash games, particularly Armor games that are fairly old, that do a very similar thing to this. They do this boiled-down strategy stuff, and they focus entirely on spawning units and pushing your enemy across the lane. And now there are enough games to really call it a genre, I would say. I don't think there's really any doubt about that. There's so many of them. And most of them are on mobile devices because it's a genre that works very well on mobile devices. You know what doesn't work very well is that's going against AoE guys with these small caterpillars there. There we go. That should force them back and hopefully allow me to start to push things back in here. It got a little bit more difficult after the first set of levels and the first boss, let me put it that way. So, it's very simplistic, but it does have a couple of mechanics that I quite like. I like the element of customization and the fact that you're sort of adapting in real time. So, if I see a bunch of guys coming, I'll probably want to spawn something that has some AoE. Maybe I notice that they have a bunch of heavy guns, but they're not AoE guns, so I'll probably just spawn a bunch of smaller caterpillars with just one weapon on them or whatever. Maybe I just want to spawn a caterpillar that's entirely dedicated to defense, just to tank damage. And that can work. Admittedly, you are limited as to the customization you can do, and you may very well, at some point, have to go back and change your items around in the loadout screen prior, otherwise you won't really get anywhere. But, is the genre even any good, I suppose, is what a lot of people would ask. And then the second question is this a good example of the genre? And I'd say it probably is a good example of the genre. It's not a particularly complicated game, but most tug-of-wars aren't. And I think that there's two kinds of tug-of-wars that are really popular right now. There's either the single-lane tug-of-war, which is like this, or there is the lane-based tug-of-war, which some people even call lane strategy, which would be stuff like, I wouldn't even call it Plants vs. Zombies, but things like Ninja Cats versus Samurai Dogs, Warhammer Storm of Vengeance. There's plenty of examples of that. But, I mean, there's also a lot of really, really bad examples of those very basic lane strategy games. I think that the straight-up tug-of-war is a little bit more of an honest format. And honestly, I think that Battlepillars actually does it fairly well. And why do I say that? Well, there's a number of different reasons. Firstly, I think the art style is quite nice. I like the fact that you are essentially creating custom creatures, and the higher amount of... That's a really awkward sentence. Let's try that one again. The bigger the caterpillar you make, the more brutal it looks. It actually gets like a general's hat and things like that. Every time you upgrade a weapon, there's actually a visible upgrade available, so you can see that you've upgraded it, which is a nice little touch and also very useful for telling exactly just how powerful your enemy's stuff is. There's a decent variety of items available. They've also got them available right from the start, so instead of having kind of a level-based progression, it's just a case of as long as you have enough tomatoes, which is the secondary currency, and this is how you earn them, by the way, by either beating the levels, well, it's both. You can either get the drops here or beat the levels, and obviously you generally want to do both of those things. And then you can spend them on whatever you want. I mean, you can get the best weapon from the very start. I say best, loosely. And that's good, because it does mean the items are actually balanced, for the most part, and you can create your own strategy, although there are some that clearly don't work. I tried to go for a kind of big on suicide bomber strategy on my a couple of levels ago, and it just flat out fell on its face. It did not work at all. I guess it's feasible on certain levels, but not all of them. The AI does adapt to you quite well. If it sees you throwing a bunch of smaller creatures out, the chances are it's going to start spawning AoE stuff, and you're going to have a really bad time at that point. So for what it is, it's actually pretty good. I like the idea behind it. The theme is very strange. I mean, oh, there's caterpillars and they're fighting. Why? Why is that happening? That is not something that I could personally tell you, but it is happening, and it's something you've just got to accept and move on with your life. It works well for what it is, and I think that if you're going to have something that involved building a bunch of components, the only other thing you could do is probably battle trains or something like that, which obviously would be really strange. Not that this is normal in any way, but you get the idea. I'm 4 short for upgrading my grub swarm. Oh, well, never mind. I guess we'll go on to the next level. Every now and again, it throws a puzzle level at you as well, where you have a limited amount of resources in order to spawn the caterpillars you need to beat this. So you can see like the first wave is a bunch of really, really powerful AoE, so the chances are I'd want something that's pretty tough. There we go. I'd want to be a little bit careful though. I don't want to spend too much. Is that good enough? I guess we'll find out. I don't want to send a second one because of the obvious AoE damage, but I like the fact that they've thrown this in there. There's occasionally a boss as well who will do a bunch of different stuff, so I approve of that. Evidently that was the wrong call. That's actually napalm. Lots and lots of horrible napalm. This is actually going to be a bit difficult with what I've got. I'm not even sure if I can. I have a feeling these napalm things punish you for making long creatures. That might be it. Maybe I should just make a bunch of smaller ones. And I guess we'll find out as we go through. They do seem to burn quite consistently. Yeah, that's not too good. They seem to spread around as well, so not brilliant. It's good for what it is. What it is very simplistic, but I think that the reason why tug-of-war custom games were so popular in StarCraft is the same reason why tug-of-war custom games are fairly popular now. It's the fact that people want the RTS kind of experience. They want to be able to mass a bunch of powerful units, amass a powerful army, and attack, and yet they don't have the mechanical skill to do it. So you break that down to its barest possible components, and what you get is a tug-of-war game. And I remember playing a bunch of Flash games back in the day that did this, and I still found them enjoyable, even though at the time I was playing stuff like Command & Conquer and Warcraft 3, and I was loving the RTS, but it's a strange little subgenre that actually works fairly well, and I think that the rise of the mobile game market has allowed it to propel itself to the point where you can actually make money making these games, instead of just making a bunch of custom stuff. I think I'll have to switch back over to my cannons here. I think I'm having a fairly serious problem with range, and all my dudes are dying, which is not really ideal, so we'll swap that out. Unfortunately, this is highly upgraded, and my cannon isn't, so this actually could suck completely. Alright, well, we'll give it a shot anyway. I'll put a bunch of cannons on that one. I don't know if I want to armor it. I guess I'd need to put a little bit of damage reduction on it. There we go. And hopefully try and murder it with the long-range cannons instead. They're not that long-range, though. And the AI does have a tendency of hopping the guy forward every now and again, putting him in range. But thankfully here, you'll see I'm only taking damage from one, so clearly the cannons are the way to go here. But even then, this guy dies pretty fast. But, you know, I like those levels which have a degree of experimentation on them. I think that the real-time tug-of-war stuff can be very, very simplistic. And it can often just devolve into a scrum where you're just spamming as many units as possible. These kind of puzzle levels do encourage you to think a little bit smarter instead of just spawning as many units as you can and hoping for the best. I think I actually might need a medic here. And I haven't got that unlocked, but I could go and do that. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So let's just bail on this and go buy a different component. There we go, buy the medic snail. But it does tap into that innate desire to play something strategic without actually, you know, really doing a great deal of strategizing. What I would say is that the fact that you can switch up your compositions on the fly like this, I think actually does damage the strategic depth of it, although it does give it a little bit more immediacy. And I suppose that people playing on mobile devices are looking for that kind of experience. If you play something like Nexus Wars on StarCraft 2, what you'll probably see is that once you commit to a particular path, it takes a long time to get off that pathway. And if you end up getting hard counted, you're in real trouble. And that's something that you have to consider when you're playing a game like that. In this game, you don't really get locked into any particular path outside of the loadout that you went into the game with. And you can very easily jump out and change that if you so desire. Yeah, this was clearly the way to do this. This is a lot better composition, though I do have to wonder how these next guys are going to do. Well, clearly more of the long-range dudes is the way to go here. Yeah, I think we can probably just beat the second wave with this as well, although they seem to have some poison, which is not too brilliant. So, I think a game like Nexus Wars and Nexus Squadron Strike and things like Desert Strike for StarCraft 2 Arcade maybe have greater strategic depth. They also have the team play aspect of it. Though I have to say, I don't necessarily enjoy the team play aspect of those games. I get very frustrated if somebody doesn't do things right. And that happens a lot in games like that. Alright, this is the last thing we can spawn, so here's hoping I actually got enough dudes. I probably should have sent my guys in a little quicker, but no, we should be okay. I think we've broken this level now. Yeah, this should do the trick. So it's nice to have the 1v1. I think in multiplayer this would be pretty solid. Unfortunately, there's no one playing it right now. Of course, you could do that on a phone, and you probably have a better time with it there. But it's not bad for what it is, and it's cheap as well. Currently, it's $2.50. It's going to be $5 once it prices up to full. It's got its little discount sale in the first couple of weeks. And honestly, it's a solid PC port for the mobile games. And it's so rare to see that. You usually see an absolute mess. And I'm very glad that they actually decided, you know what would be good? Hotkeys and high resolutions and properly mouse-controlled menus. It's a good port. And I am always surprised to see that when dealing with mobile games, because more often than not, they're very sloppy. But Hitcents isn't. And I appreciate that a great deal. So, yes, it's definitely a casual game. It doesn't require a huge degree of thought, but every now and again, that's the kind of stuff that you're looking for, I think. And this game does provide that. It does a good job at it. It's got a bunch of content. They put a bunch of new stuff in for the Steam release, which is nice. They obviously removed the microtransactions, which is good as well. And if you're looking for a tug-of-war style game, then this is it. And it's pretty good at what it does. Admittedly, it is also competing with a lot of very good free stuff that you can find on the StarCraft arcade, or on sites like Armor Games, or even in Warcraft 3. So, outside of a mobile device, it's a little difficult, I suppose, to get a PC gamer to pay for a game that they've been playing previously for free. Wow, I just got wrecked on that one, didn't I? Good lord. So, yeah, that's a tough sell. But it is fairly cheap, and it's a nicely put together game with a nice art style, some cool ideas, in a fairly limited genre, and it does really what it needs to do in order to be an effective tug-of-war title. So I'll give it that. I think any problems that the game really has outside of that are more genre inherent, and that's going to be subjective. You're either just going to hate that genre, or you're going to dig it. So I don't think it's the fault of the game per se. There aren't actually any obvious overt faults that I can find with Battlepillars other than the fact that it's a tug-of-war game. So there you go. Either you like tug-of-war games or you don't. It's really as simple as that. And for a simplistic kind of concept, it executes it well. So good on them for that. You can pick it up for $2.50 during the launch week, or $5, or your regional equivalent, once the launch week is done. It's available on Steam. It's also available for free on iOS and Android, though do bear in mind it does have the in-app purchase thing going for it there. My name has been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.